Welcome to our deep dive on becoming a future-proof authority on net zero. Look, in today's world, a simple pledge is no longer enough. What you need is precision. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty logistical strategies that turn these incredibly complex supply chains into transparent, low-carbon machines. We'll show you exactly how to leverage supplier incentives and audit every single link in the chain to meet those looming mandates.
So let's just kick things off with a number that should honestly stop you in your tracks. More than 75%. That is the average slice of a company's carbon footprint that's hiding in plain sight. It's not in your factories, it's not in your offices, it's very deep within your global supply chain. And for some industries, like fashion or consumer goods, that number can jump to an insane 99%.
So you've done it. The pledge is made, the target's announced, the press release went out, but here's the reality check. Achieving a credible science-based net zero goal means you have to radically transform that hidden 75%. It is a massive journey, moving from guesstimates to precision, from big, broad pledges to the hard work of daily practice. All right, here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the sheer scale of the challenge. Then we'll get into the official rulebook you absolutely have to play by. From there, we'll get super practical, cracking the code on data, turning your suppliers into partners, building the low-carbon machine with contracts and finance, and we'll wrap it all up with your own strategic roadmap. Okay, so first things first. Let's unpack how this whole thing exploded from a kind of niche sustainability issue into a core strategic problem that's keeping CEOs up at night at thousands of the world's biggest companies. Let's be crystal clear. This is not some fringe movement. We're talking about more than 10,000 companies that have now had their climate targets officially validated by the Science Based Targets Initiative. You'll hear it called SBTI. And we're not talking about small businesses here. These are organizations that represent over 40% of the entire global market cap. This is the big leagues.
In the momentum, it is absolutely staggering. We've seen a 227% surge in companies setting both their near-term and their long-term net zero targets in just the last couple of years. And this isn't just for good PR. This is being driven by a cold, hard look at the risks of not transitioning and, frankly, the immense economic opportunity in building the low-carbon economy of the future.
So what's the big takeaway here? Setting a target is really just the starting gun firing. The real race, the messy, difficult, but also the most impactful part of this whole journey is tackling what we call Scope 3 emissions. That's all the carbon embedded in everything you buy, from raw materials to shipping and everything that happens to your products after they're out the door. It's the whole shebang. So, to even begin to solve this monumental challenge, you've got to understand the rules of the game. And that means getting intimately familiar with the SBTI standard. It really is the undisputed gold standard for corporate climate action. Now, SBTI isn't just another reporting framework in the alphabet soup of ESG. No way. This is the world's only methodology for setting corporate net zero targets that is rigorously, scientifically aligned with that 1.5 degrees C Paris Agreement goal. And its core principle is a totally non-negotiable hierarchy of action. First, you make deep, rapid cuts to emissions in your value chain, period. Only after you've hit at least a 90% reduction can you even think about using carbon removals for that tiny bit that's left over. And this is where the rubber really meets the road. The SBTI forces this incredible discipline. For your near-term targets, say the next 5 to 10 years, you've got to roughly halve your emissions by 2030. That's a really aggressive pace. But that long-term target, that's where the real transformation happens. A 90% or greater absolute reduction across your entire footprint. Now look closely at that line on Scope 3 coverage, because this brings us to the tripwire for most companies, what's known as the 40% rule.
And this right here, this is the rule that changes everything. It's the clause that yanks the entire global supply chain into the net zero mission. If your Scope 3 emissions make up more than 40% of your total footprint, which, as we saw, is true for pretty much everyone, then you are required to set a specific target to cut those emissions. You simply cannot achieve a science-based target without decarbonizing your supply chain. It's impossible.
Okay, so if you're now on the hook for tackling all these emissions, how in the world do you manage carbon that you don't directly control? Well, it all starts with a journey from broad, blurry estimates to sharp, granular, actionable data. The official playbook for this is the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and it breaks down the messy, complex world of Scope 3 into 15 distinct categories, or buckets. Upstream is everything that comes into your business. Raw materials, travel, you name it.
Downstream is everything that happens after it leaves, shipping to customers, how they use the product, and what happens at the end of its life. It is a huge, complex web.
So how do you even start counting all this? Well, you usually start with what's called the spend-based method. It's kind of like looking at a blurry satellite map. You take what you spend, you multiply it by industry averages, and you get a rough idea of your hotspots. It's a great starting point, but to drive real change, you have to graduate to supplier-specific methods. You need primary data, like their actual energy bills. You've got to go from that blurry photo to a high-definition image.
But let's be real, making that jump from blurry to HD is, well, it's really hard. A staggering 85% of companies say just getting access to that primary data from suppliers is a huge barrier. And what's even crazier, 2/3 of them are still trying to manage this immense complexity with spreadsheets. That's a recipe for disaster. It's just not scalable or auditable.
So, because spreadsheets are a total nightmare for this, a whole new industry of enterprise software has popped up to solve the problem. These specialized carbon accounting platforms are becoming absolutely essential. They automate the data collection, they handle the mind-bending calculations, and they give you an audit-ready system that a spreadsheet just can't compete with. Honestly, picking the right platform is now a major strategic decision. Okay, so you've got the data. You can see the problem clearly. Now what? Now comes the human part, engagement. This is all about transforming your supply chain from a source of climate risk into a powerful engine for decarbonization. And this is a fantastic way to think about it. The Transform to Net Zero initiative, which includes giants like Microsoft and Nike, created this framework. It's basically a maturity ladder for your suppliers. It maps their journey from ad hoc, where they're just kind of reacting to requests, all the way up to transformative, where climate action is baked into their DNA.
The big goal here is to get all your important suppliers to at least step 2 on that ladder, the nascent tier. What that means is, at a bare minimum, they are measuring their own direct emissions and they've set a target to use renewable energy. Think of it as the new price of admission for doing business with a top-tier company. It's the new baseline.
But of course, you can't use a one-size-fits-all approach, right? You've got hundreds, maybe thousands of suppliers, so you've got to be smart. The Rocky Mountain Institute created this excellent model for segmenting them. You group them based on their impact and their maturity. For your best partners, you focus on co-innovation. For the ones that are high impact but still learning, you offer support and training. It's all about focusing your energy where it'll make the biggest difference.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty. How do you actually hardwire this stuff into your business operations? We're talking about embedding decarbonization directly into your contracts, your logistics, and your financing.
This is one of my favorite examples because it's so brilliantly simple and effective. Salesforce realized the most powerful tool they have isn't a new program, it's a contract. So they created something called the Sustainability Exhibit. It's not a voluntary pledge, it's a legal addendum that gets baked right into their supplier contracts, giving climate action real financial weight. And this isn't just some slap on the wrist. This thing has real financial teeth. If a supplier doesn't meet their climate commitments, it triggers what's called the climate positive remedy. They are contractually obligated to pay a chunk of the contract's value into a climate fund. It sends a powerful message. Decarbonization is just as serious as your delivery deadlines.
And then, of course, you've got to deal with the actual stuff moving around the planet. The trucks, the ships, the planes, they are the arteries of global trade, and they pump out about 12% of all energy-related CO2. Cleaning this up means a huge push for electrification, new low-carbon fuels, and using AI to make sure no truck or ship ever travels with wasted empty miles.
Okay, but let's be honest. All this transformation costs a ton of money, especially for those really tough industries like steel or cement. Just look at the H2 Green Steel project in Sweden. It's one of the world's first planned fossil-free steel plants, and to get it off the ground, they had to raise a staggering 6.5 billion euros.
So how on earth did they pull that off? Well, it was a pretty brilliant recipe for green financing. They brought in a mix of investors, but the crucial part? They got customers like BMW to sign long-term, binding contracts to buy the green steel before the plant was even built. That guaranteed revenue de-risked the whole project for lenders. It's proof that even these massive industrial projects are now becoming bankable.
And you see a different but equally clever approach in industries like fashion, where a bunch of different brands all use the same factory. H&M Group is pioneering what's called blended capital. They're pooling money with other brands and banks to collectively invest in upgrading those shared suppliers. It's a genius way to solve the free rider problem, where one company pays for an upgrade that everyone benefits from. It's collaboration in action.
Okay, we have gone through a lot. The problem, the rules, the cutting-edge solutions. So let's put it all together. How do you assemble all these pieces into a coherent strategy to truly take command of your value chain?
So here it is, your 6-step plan to take control. You start with data to find your hotspots. Then you move to people, engaging them with a smart, tiered model. Next, you hardwire it into the business with contracts and logistics. You collaborate on financing. And finally, you build for the future with seamless data exchange. This is the blueprint for turning that pledge into a powerful reality.
Look, the path to becoming a future-proof authority on this is clear. The frameworks are there, the tech is available, the financial models are being proven as we speak. So really, the only question left is, where will your transformation begin?
If you found this explainer valuable, and I hope you did, please do us a favor and like, share, and subscribe to the ISO Automation Lab. We'll be doing a lot more deep dives on critical ESG topics just like this one. Thanks so much for watching.